Chapter 16. Truth in a Nightmare. Comet rolled as he slept, unable to stay in one position. His eyes were firmly shut, but he was doing things a pony normally did while awake. He kicked and shivered, bit his lower lip and shook his head. Inside his mind, a dark storm was brewing. Old thoughts of his past covered the warm spot Comet so desperately searched for. Images of his parents, himself, and a light gold mare with tangerine eyes and a verdant mane whisked around him, followed by several lines of a speech Comet had long ago
Comet? What did you do?
he heard his mother shout.
Wake up, Nova, please. Please wake up.
He heard a younger version of himself sob. There's nothing you could have done, Sunstorm gently whispered to him.
Don't worry about me,
chided a soft voice.
Go have fun.
Comet's mind silenced at that voice, and he dreaded the sound of it. He hadn't heard that voice in almost 15 years, but the words sounded like they were spoken just yesterday. The image of the gold mare slowly materialized before him. She was taller than Comet, but had a sickly look to her. Her wonderful tangerine eyes stared at him gently through her half-lidded eyelids, and the small smile she always wore was still on her face. Comet felt everything melt away as he returned her gaze and whispered, Nova. He felt himself start to move, and his voice grew louder. Nova! Nova! He shouted as he neared her. Just as he was about to reach her, her form glowed like the sun. Comet threw himself at her, trying to hang on to her, but she disappeared into small orbs of golden light and wafted around him in no particular order. Comet swung his head around the lights and fruitlessly tried to grab at them. The lights, one by one, faded away, even as Comet protested. She had left him again, and a feeling of dread, mixed with a sadness that couldn't be measured, wrapped around Comet's chest, and it was suddenly very hard to breathe. Way outside of the castle, another nightmare for Comet was taking place. Angel sat alone at the posh restaurant, slowly sipping at some frozen strawberry drink. It was delicious, but her mood wasn't in the right spot. She wished Comet was here, her favorite and totally awesome Pegasus, but sadly, she was a bat pony, and therefore a night guard to Princess Cadence. The princess was actually not too far away from Angel, busy laughing and talking to random ponies as they waited for Shining Armor to arrive. Angel wasn't her only guard, however. Several other bat ponies and 2 unicorns stood very close to her, but at Cadence's insistence, they were all spread out among the restaurant, still within a quick dash's distance of her. Angel took another dejected sip of her drink and wished something interesting would happen.
Wait. Don't I know that pony?
Came a vaguely familiar voice. Angel spun her head with a look of mixed feelings and saw Mangrove smiling widely at her, while Sunstorm had his snout buried in a menu. He peeked up from it just in time to see Angel before a dark gray blur assaulted his wife. Angel wrapped Mangrove in a rather large hug and gushed at her.
Oh, my Celestia! It's so nice to see you two again. How have you been?
After a few odd minutes of Mangrove and Angel exchanging some strange information, Angel was sitting at a table with them.
So, tell me, how was the date with Comet?
Mangrove asked invasively. Sun just shook his head again and was about to stop the conversation, but Angel spoke first.
Oh, it was absolutely awesome,
Angel nearly shouted.
He took me to the carnival here and won me like 4 prizes. I didn't know he was so good at the ring tosses and bottle towers.
Sun froze, and Mangrove's smile seemed to sour. Comet had played ring toss and bottle tower? A sudden feel of dread crept into Sun's chest as he renewed his interest in the menu, and Mangrove gave an unsure gulp.
He sure is, isn't he?
She responded in a shaky voice. Now, Angel would never call herself the brightest pony, but she could clearly see something was wrong with that bit of information. She narrowed her eyes at the couple and slowly talked.
Yeah, he did. Is that bad? Oh, nothing, Mangrove replied, over-enthusiastically. He always had an affinity for games like that, even while he was young.
Mangrove's face paled as she spoke the last word, and Sun's eyes shrank. Mangrove wasted no time in examining the table as Sunstorm raised the menu up farther. They were trying to hide something from Angel. She hated being in the dark.
What is it?
Angel asked accusingly. Mangrove snapped her head up, and Angel leaned in a little closer to her, eyes still narrowed.
What's wrong if Comet took me to a place and played those games?
Mangrove gave a shallow smile and said,
Oh, it's nothing.
She didn't get to finish before Angel cut her off.
Yes, it is. You two are acting like Comet did when we first met. Evasive and unwilling to talk. What are you trying to hide?
Angel almost growled. It was really not a good way to talk to his parents, but Comet was hiding something from her ever since she had found those pictures on the first day. She initially just thought it was him being defensive of her invasion, but the more she thought about it, the more she was sure he was hiding something. His parents were no better at hiding either.
What is he trying to keep from me and every pony else?
Mangrove's weak smile finally broke into a frown, and she sighed.
Angel, you must understand. Comet, well, he's always been protective.
Dear, Sun cut in, staring straight into her magenta eyes. Don't. Comet will tell her when he's ready. His tone was almost angry at Angel.
Son, Comet will never tell her on his own, and you know that,
Mangrove said in her sad tone. Sun's face hardened, and he returned to his menu. Well, make sure when he finds out, you tell him that I had no part of this, Angel, he said, clearly angry. Right then, Angel became scared of what exactly she was trying to uncover. It wasn't just a secret Comet was trying to bury. It seemed like one of his parents wanted to forget as well. She suddenly felt a massive amount of apprehension as Mangrove turned her head back to her. But if his mother knew Comet wouldn't tell her, she readied herself for whatever was going to happen.
Did Comet tell you that he was an only foal?
Mangrove asked. Angel nodded slowly, and Mangrove continued.
Well, that was a lie. He never wants to talk about it, but he had a sibling. His big sister and our daughter, Nova. Nova?
Angel repeated quickly.
Yes, Nova,
Mangrove responded, and Sun tensed up, but still refused to talk.
She was 4 years older than Comet, and was also very sick from birth. Nova had a rare immune system that caused her to produce next to no white blood cells. She was also coughing and bedridden. Comet, when he was old enough, made it his goal to keep his big sister healthy. He took it very seriously. He even got a cutie mark for caring for her.
Angel's eyes widened, and she sat in silence. He got his cutie mark from helping his big sister?
He must have cared for her a lot,
she mused quietly, and Mangrove's face soured again.
Oh, she meant the world to him.
Mangrove pressed on, with sadness edging in her voice.
Comet even refused to go to school so he could care for her. He only went outside because she insisted him to go, but never hung around with any pony afterwards. Whenever we came home, he was always right by her side, or fluffing her pillows, moving blankets, or even playing a game with her. He always did it with such a smile. Nova meant more to him than even us.
Wow, Angel said softly. She'd never imagined Comet would do that, especially with how distant he normally acted.
Well, what happened to her?
She asked before thinking. As soon as the question escaped Angel's lips, she instantly loathed herself for it. If the subject hurt the two ponies for even bringing it up, what happened to her must have hurt 10 times worse. She broke her line of sight and stared at the ground. Somewhere behind her, Mangrove sniffled. Sun, who was resolutely against telling Angel about this, reached out a hoof and rubbed Mangrove's. What happened to Nova had nearly torn the family apart, and Mangrove took it especially hard. Somewhere, deep in Sun's chest, the familiar feeling of guilt and self-loathing began to rise. Comet stood in his old house and looked around at the furniture. That ugly furniture his parents had used since they were married littered the room. The violent shade of blue on the walls seemed to glow, and a creak echoed to him. The rickety staircase leading up to the second story creaked again, and Comet's eyes followed it up to the series of doors that lined the upstairs wall. 2 were wide open, one being Comet's old room, In the other, his parents. Comet slowly walked up the stairs, and the familiar creaking as he walked pushed him forward. His eyes jogged to the right as he searched the hallway. At the end, one door remained shut, and a large knot formed in Comet's throat. He walked slowly to it and felt the knot begin to choke him. That door was supposed to remain shut forever. But why was it pulling him towards it? Comet stood outside the closed door and stared at it, afraid of opening. Going into this room the last time made him cover himself with water and sit down in the snow where he caught hypothermia. Still, the door called him, and he extended a hoof, pushing it open slowly. Inside the room, bright sunlight flooded it, washing it in yellowish glow. Stuffed animals of all kinds, including a stuffed version of Princess Celestia, sat on a shelf on the far wall, each smiling softly. Comet let his gaze wander to the left where the dresser sat covered with crayon drawings of an orange colt and a gold pony, each bearing a large red heart. His lungs seemed to fail as he saw those drawings. They were supposed to be 6 feet under the ground. His eyes moved over to the bed covered in multicolored quilts, and, much to his surprise, a light gold pony with a verdant green mane smiled at him. Her tangerine eyes seemed to glow themselves, and Comet's heart skipped a beat. "Nova," he murmured, and he slowly walked over to the bed.
"Hey, Comet,"
she said weakly.
"How was school today?"
Without thinking, Comet put his hooves on the bed and stared at her. "The same as always," he said slowly, unsure of what was happening. Nova reached out a hoof and gently patted him on the head, and Comet inhaled sharply. This couldn't be real. No, it just couldn't. Nova smiled at him and gently pulled him into a hug, one Comet's body reacted to without his mind. He felt her gentle legs hug him, and his mind was wiped of all thought. It all felt so real.
Nova required a lot of medication so she could have us all around. The doctors often said she should be quarantined, but she admittedly refused to be. She always said that if she was isolated, then there was no point in living. She never said it out loud, though, but Comet was the main reason for her medication. He always washed his hoofs and sterilized everything, but being a colt, he was prone to carrying diseases.
Mangrove continued, squeezing Son's hoof.
Son and I, we tried to care for her, but Comet insisted on being her guardian. He worked hard trying to keep her happy and healthy. He even spent 6 weeks learning how to play the carnival game, the ring toss you mentioned, so he could win Nova a gift for her birthday.
Mangrove paused there and thought a few seconds before continuing.
He won her a stuffed Celestia, and Nova cherished it. She always kept it close at night and talked to it like it was related to Celestia. It was during that time Comet swore he'd become a royal guard so he could protect Nova better.
Angel sat there, shaken by what she was hearing. Comet had a big sister that he loved more than anything, and she had a horrible feeling she knew where this was going. It also impressed upon her why his parents reacted the way they did when she told him about the carnival. That plushy Princess Luna she had suddenly took on a more meaning than a simple gift. Comet had won a Princess Celestia for Nova and a Luna for her, so she could only guess how much she really meant to him. After a couple of more seconds, Angel finally worked up what little courage she had to ask a question.
What happened to her?
Mangrove's eyes watered, and Son gave a small shudder. Comet was suddenly at his house, bundled up in his coat and wool hat, stomping his hoof angrily at the ground.
"But you promised we could go today,"
he whined to his parents, who were in turn getting ready to leave.
"Now, Comet, we have to go. I'm sorry we can't take you to the park,"
his green mother said gently. Comet felt a couple of tears well up before the sweet and familiar voice called out,
"Go ahead. I'll take him."
All 3 ponies spun their heads to see thickly bundled up Pony descending the stairs. Her green mane poked out in different increments, but Comet's eyes widened.
"Nova, what are you doing out of bed?"
he asked wearily. She smiled back to him and said to their mother,
I'll take him. After all, the doctors say being in the sun helps with my condition.
After several minutes of arguing and making sure they were all warm, Sun and Mangrove left the house feeling a huge amount of regret. Nova was going to take Comet to the park. 20 minutes later, Comet and Nova stood at the park that was covered in snow. Comet checked and rechecked her wrappings as she sat on the bench.
I'm fine, Comet, she cooed softly. Now, go have some fun. You're young and need to play.
Comet smiled at her and said,
Be sure to tell me if you need something,
before he ran off. He trusted his older sister explicitly and enjoyed himself for an hour and a half before returning to her. She was fast asleep. Her head slightly nodded forward, and Comet nudged her.
It's time for you to get your medicine,
Comet called happily. Nova remained asleep, and Comet prodded her harder. She remained asleep, and soon Comet was shaking her violently, screaming her name to wake her up. She kept her eyes closed, and the small, familiar smile on her lips as he did so, frozen in time.
Comet pulled her halfway home before we found him,
Mangrove said, now fully crying.
He was a wreck, and he tried to feed her medicine as we waited for the ambulance and doctor. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, and Comet blamed himself for what happened. She really just died from an irregular heartbeat the medicines gave her. But Comet refuses to believe that. He's always held on to the belief that he was the cause of her death, and he's never forgiven himself. He withdrew into that state you met him, and where he had no friends and pushed every pony away. Twice he caught hypothermia on Nova's birthday because he sat on the bench where she died all day.
Angel stared down at her plate, trying her best to hold back tears. No wonder it took her 4 months to get Comet to be friendly around her. She could only imagine what Comet felt that day. The day his older sister died. The Sun gritted his teeth and Mangrove finished.
Comet's been trying to repress those memories of his big sister, our daughter, for as long as we can remember. But when he's around you, well, he's like a different pony altogether. It's almost like he can forget about her and be happy again.
She looked up at Angel and smiled to her, tears streaking her cheeks.
You're so much like her. Maybe Comet can finally move on.
Comet sat at his footlocker, having woken up from the nightmare. Thinking about Nova always did that to him, giving him terrible dreams about her. He sat within the moonlight, illuminating an old piece of parchment, and he silently cried while reading it. The beautiful script was etched into his mind, but reading it always helped him through those nights when he couldn't forget her.
To my baby brother, if you're reading this, then the inevitable's happened. I'm sorry that I can no longer be there to see you grow up and reach your goals, and it makes me sad to know that. I do know what your cutie mark means, and how I wish to tell you. An exploding comet doesn't mean destruction. It actually means beauty. From our perspective, a comet burst is a beautiful sight, since it makes hundreds of new stars for us to gaze at and enjoy. In the wake of the cataclysm, hope can be found. It will hurt when I'm gone, just like a shooting star exploding. But you must not give up. In the wake of your greatest tragedy, new doors will open for you, other than taking care of a sickly pony. Become the royal guard you always wanted to be, and don't hold back on my part. You're a great pony at heart, and one day you'll show the world that. Always remember as well that, even though I can't say it to you with my voice, I love you more than life itself. You were my only friend, and the best caretaker I could ever want. I adored every moment I was with you, and missed every second you were away. I know you'll miss me, but remember I will miss you more. Please help Mom and Dad to get through my death by being yourself, since you will be their only joy in the world after my time comes. I don't know how it will happen, But don't ever blame yourself for whatever happens. By giving me hope and a reason to live. Don't you ever forget that, my little star. Don't ever forget that I love you more than anything else. Your big sister, Nova.